We talk about habits all the time. Building good ones, breaking bad ones, tracking them, gamifying them, it's everywhere. But after teaching the science of habits to my students for 3 years now, I realized that most people misunderstand what a habit actually is. We tend to think of habits as things we often do. You repeat something every day and voila, it's a habit. But that's not true. Repetition alone isn't what makes a behavior a habit. What really defines a habit is automaticity. Let's unpack that. When psychologists talk about habits, they're talking about behaviors that happen automatically in response to a specific cue without conscious decision making. It's not about how many times you've done it, it's about whether or not you did it without needing to think. For instance, you come home, take off your shoes, put your keys in a bowl. That's automatic. You are not deciding every single time that that's what you will place them. You're just doing it. But you could also repeat a behavior every day out of willpower. Let's say you've decided to meditate every morning. You set an alarm, you check it off a list, you feel good about it. But the moment you stop tracking, the behavior disappears. That wasn't a habit, that was a self-regulated behavior, a choice that you kept making consciously. And that's very different. The automaticity part, that's what makes habits powerful, but also stubborn. Once something becomes automatic, it lives in a different part of our brain and we cannot think it away. How long does it take the brain to reach this stage? Don't say 21 days. The story behind that number is actually kind of funny. It goes back to the 60s when a plastic surgeon named Maxwell Maltz, he noticed that after surgery, his patients took about 3 weeks to adjust to their new faces. So he wasn't talking about habits, he was talking about psychological adaptation to plastic surgery. But over time, that 21 days idea somehow got picked up by the self-help world, turned into a rule, and it stuck around for decades. But then came the actual research. In 2009, Lally and her team at the University College London, they decided to test how long it really takes to form a habit. And they found that the average time was 66 days, but the range was very wide, anywhere between 18 days and 254 days, depending on the behavior. So brushing our teeth after breakfast could take us 3 weeks to learn as a habit, but starting a daily running routine, that could take months. There's no magic number. The timeline depends on the complexity of the behavior, on the environment, on our emotional association with the behavior, and a bunch of other variables. Now, what's fascinating and what we rarely notice is just how many of our daily actions are habits. Studies suggest that around 40 to 50% of our daily behaviors are habitual. That means that half of what we do each day isn't really chosen, it's triggered. Just think about it. What we eat, whether we drink coffee or tea in the morning, how we check our phone, how often do we check our email. These things feel like decisions, but they are actually scripts that our brain is running automatically. Habitual behaviors are actually stored in basal ganglia, a brain structure that does not really care about our conscious decisions. And once a pattern is encoded there, you can delete it. You can only replace it. And that's why change is so hard. You can't just decide your way out of an automatic script. You have to reprogram it. How does that reprogramming happen? To do it, you have first to notice what's automatic, what cue triggers it, what feeling it satisfies, what context it lives in. For instance, maybe every time you sit on the couch, you reach for your phone. It's not because you decided, now I will scroll, it's just a loop that runs. Couch, phone, dopamine, repeat. And the first step in changing that is awareness. You can't replace what you can't see. Once you spot it, then you can design a substitute. So maybe you say, when I sit on the couch, I'll pick up a book instead. And that leads us to something really important: context. If you're not in this field of cognitive science, you probably underestimate how much context controls our behavior. Habits aren't tied to time, they are tied to situations. So 3 o'clock isn't a habit cue because my 3 o'clock on a random Friday will be different from my 3 o'clock on a, Thursday or a different Friday. But after I get home from work, That's a cue with the context. There's the same environment, same sequence, same mental state. And that's what our brains latches onto. In fact, research shows that habits are context-dependent memory traces. So the more consistent the context, the faster a behavior becomes automatic. And that also explains something most of you I'm sure, have experienced. When you move or travel, your habits fall apart. You are suddenly in a new space and your cues are gone. That can actually be a very good thing. When I moved apartments, I had this exact habit of lying on the couch and scrolling endlessly on my phone. But when I moved, I told myself, this new couch won't be the trigger. I did not let myself start that loop again. I protected that new couch context, and it worked. I've been in this apartment for almost a year prior to quitting my smartphone altogether, but in that year, I have not experienced any couch surfing binges like before. Another example is technology. When I got an iPad back in 2019, I decided I would never use it for any entertainment, like at all. No socials, no YouTube, no Netflix, no internet browsing. And indeed, in 6 years, I have not watched a single YouTube video on it. I haven't done anything but studying and work on it. So that's something to keep in mind. When you are changing environments, like you are moving house, you're starting a new job, like even beginning a new season of life, these are your fresh start moments, times when your old cues are disrupted so you can build new patterns more easily. And it's such a great opportunity to reset your habits, but only if you do it intentionally, of course. Now, there's another misconception I want to clear up. Habits aren't about willpower, not at all, actually. Habits are what happens when willpower is no longer needed. But this is the paradox of habits, because building a habit does require willpower, or maybe better say self-regulation strategies, especially in the beginning. You need that conscious effort to repeat the same action on cue again and again and again in the same context until your brain starts to automate it. So yes, there's a lot of effort in the early days as you are like laying these neural tracks, but over time it definitely gets easier, not because you're getting stronger or better, but because your automatic brain takes over. And that's where I see most self-improvement attempts fail. I think people start to overhaul everything at once, not realizing how much regulation they need from the start. So I see people like, comes January and they're like, I'll start working out, meditating, journaling, reading, cooking, all from day one. But that's like trying to learn 5 foreign languages for your brain at the same time. If we look at the research and just at common sense, the brain prefers one clear signal at a time. So I think the smart approach is pick one tiny thing, do that, make it automatic, then move on to the next. And it might take you 6 months before you see any progress, but once it's in place, it's effortless, it's there, and then it compounds. Before we wrap this up, let me give you a strategy on how to actually self-regulate yourself to keep repeating a new habit as you build it up. And there are dozens of those strategies: environment design, accountability, implementation intentions, temptation bundling. I could list them all and you'd use none of them probably. So let's keep it simple to start. For me personally, the most universal strategy is habit stacking. You take a behavior that already happens every day, something very reliable, and you stack a new one on top of it. So instead of saying, I'll meditate at 7 a.m., which is a time-based cue, you say, after I brush my teeth in the morning, I'll meditate in the bathroom for a minute. That's powerful because brushing your teeth already happens automatically, and you are linking the new behavior to an existing neural pattern in the same context. And that's key, context similarity. If your new habit fits naturally with the old one, like brushing teeth and applying face cream, then the friction is low. But if you try to stack writing a report after brushing your teeth, your brain will go like, what are we doing here? I don't want that. The context do not match. So if you can, choose something in the same physical and mental space, that makes stacking much smoother. Now, 5 things I want you to remember from today. Habits aren't about repetition. They are about automaticity. Habits form through context consistency. You cannot delete habits. You can only replace them. Context change is your best friend for starting fresh. And real progress means one small, deeply consistent change at a time. Once you understand that, you stop treating habits as checkboxes in your tracker. Today I meditate in the morning, tomorrow after lunch, the next day I will meditate in the evening. Yay, I've done 3 days in a row, I must be building habits. Nope. When you understand how automaticity works, the cues, the context, the repetition, that's when you stop chasing streaks in your journal and start really working on behavioral patterns that form habits.